On October the 7th, 2023, a shocking event unfolded as around 3,000 Hamas militants, as reported by the Times of Israel, infiltrated southern Israel from the Gaza Strip using various means like motorbikes, paragliders, and parachutes. These militants carried out horrifying acts of violence in Gaza border towns. Tragically, Hamas invasion led to the loss of at least 260 lives at the Supernova music festival. The Hamas fighters arrived in trucks and on motorcycles, heavily armed with body armor and AK-47 assault rifles. This devastating incident occurred while approximately 3,500 young Israelis and other foreigners were celebrating the Jewish holiday of Sukkot. The world stood in shock, and even the Israeli government found itself stunned by the audacity of the attack. Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu and his government hastily convened emergency meetings, urgently discussing the formation of a coalition government to devise a fitting response. It was a grim moment, marking the deadliest massacre in Israel since the inception of this conflict. In the days and weeks that followed, the Gaza Strip would witness a relentless onslaught of Israeli missiles and airstrikes, leading to a complete blockade on all movement in and out of the region. But this was just the opening act. Israel was poised to enter the next phase of its response in the last week of October, a ground invasion of the Gaza Strip by Israeli forces. The stage was set for a dramatic and pivotal turn in this ongoing conflict. If you've been living under a rock, don't worry. We'll bring you up to speed with a brief history of the Israel-Palestine conflict. The Israel-Palestinian conflict, rooted in the late 19th century, centers on competing national identities and land claims. It escalated in the mid-20th century, marked by key events: the 1947 UN Partition Plan, leading to Israel's declaration of statehood in 1948, sparking the Arab-Israeli War. Israel expanded its territory during the Six-Day War in 1967, occupying the West Bank, Gaza Strip, and East Jerusalem. This led to ongoing hostilities, including two intifadas and conflicts in Lebanon and Gaza. Peace efforts, like the Oslo Accords, have faced challenges. Central issues involve borders, refugees, and the State of Jerusalem. The conflict's resolution remains a global concern. At the time of this video, the death toll on the Palestinian side has tragically surged to over 9,000, with Israel also suffering more than 1,400 casualties. These numbers represent the highest toll since the conflict's inception in this region. In the midst of this pressing and heart-wrenching situation, one can't help but ponder who stands to gain from this devastating event and other similar occurrences. It's only natural to hope that no one could benefit from such a heinous and inhumane act of terrorism, at least not in the long run. However, the world can be a harsh and unforgiving place, where justice isn't always served. Sadly, there are individuals and groups whose fortunes may indeed rise amid these dire circumstances, and these include extremist leaders, the media, and arms manufacturers. It's a grim reality that underscores the complexities and consequences of conflicts like these. It has been reported that Israel's Prime Minister was warned by Egypt's spy chief of something big. Although he didn't elaborate what something big could mean, the Prime Minister is reported to have ignored or underestimated the gravity of that something big. Before this attack, there were also various protests in Israel against the government of PM Netanyahu. However, after the attack, the parliament approved a coalition government on 12 October, meaning the PM was to remain in power and prepare a response to the October 7th massacre. Irrespective of the warning from Egypt, this was such a catastrophic failure on the Israeli intelligence agency, considering how highly they are regarded. It will be a coincidence if two things are right at the same time, the two things being: is the Israeli intelligence agency not as good as the world believes, Or was there a stand-down order from someone regarding this attack? One of these statements is true and the other isn't. I don't know which. If you do, please write it down in the comment section. If we ignore the first option for a moment, it would seem like this attack was allowed to happen to give those in power an excuse to attack Gaza and Hamas. There have been several reports on how it took more than 6 hours for the IDF and other security agencies to respond to distress calls from the people at the Supernova dance party. Maybe the forces were preparing a strategy on how to approach the radical militants, or maybe they were caught with pants down and just totally confused. Or maybe someone ordered to stand down. We never know. Just like we never know what happened to $2.3 trillion that has been investigated before the crash on 9/11. But I digress. How do the people in power benefit from the murder of its own people? Well, if your position is being challenged, the easiest way to get another firm grip of power is to get the nation to rally together against an outside enemy. Americans, sounds familiar? Something 9/11. And who could be a better enemy to Israel than Hamas? All the political protests have been put behind, and the main goal of the nation right now is to focus wiping out the terrorist Hamas, as the PM said himself. So if there's any immediate winner, and this could change, to the recent outburst of the Israel-Palestine conflict, it's PM Netanyahu,
Hamas
as he
is
gets
ISIS.
to keep his position
And
as
just as the
Prime
forces
Minister.
of civilizations united
On
to
the
defeat
other side
ISIS,
of the coin,
the forces
both
of
Hamas and
civilization
Iran have
must support
succeeded
Israel.
in stalling the recent peace deal that was being brokered by the United States between Israeli and Saudi Arabia. Considering that Morocco, UAE, Egypt, Bahrain, Jordan and Sudan all have some type of deal with Israel, Saudi Arabia joining that list would have meant the end of the Palestinian struggle. But these are not the only prophecies of the war. Considering the number of lives lost following the horrific acts of October the 7th, one will think Hamas and Iran are the only beneficiary of this conflict. Well, there's more. Let's talk about the United States of America, shall we? So here's the scoop. President Joe Biden's like, hey, don't mess with the Israel-Palestine conflict, folks. But at the same time, Uncle Sam's sending more military goodies to Israel. You know, bullets, defense systems, the whole shebang. It's like a buy one get one free deal, but in the world of geopolitics. And what does this mean? Well, it's basically a flashing neon sign that says, military companies, start your engines. The US defense stocks are going wild. Lockheed Martin stock is skyrocketing like it's on a mission to Mars. It had its biggest jump in forever on a day that wasn't even about earnings. Northrop Grumman is joining the party too, with its best day since, well, forever ago. But who are the real winners in this global arms bazaar? It's the big five military-industrial complex giants: Lockheed Martin, Boeing, Raytheon, General Dynamics, and Northrop Grumman. These guys are like the Avengers of the defense world, except they're here to save their bank accounts. Every year, they're cashing in on Pentagon contracts worth over than $150 billion. It's like winning the lottery, but instead of cash, it's contracts to manufacture more dangerous weapons to help kill more people in some part of the world. You know what they say, even a coffin manufacturer starts their day with a little prayer for a booming business. You know, the media and wars go together like peanut butter and jelly, but with more explosions and camera crews. First of all, conflicts are like the adrenaline shot the media needs. Journalists are like treasure hunters, except instead of buried gold, they're after buried conflicts. They're trained to sniff out disagreements and wars. It's like catnip for news hounds. And when a conflict is in full swing, the media is all in. The Kargil conflict in 1999 was like India's first ever 24/7 war coverage extravaganza. It was like a blockbuster's movie premiere, but with more tanks and fewer red carpets. What's even crazier that Kargil was the media's first dance with a real live war. It was a historic moment, kind of like teenagers' first prom but with satellite phones and war correspondents in tuxedos. Wars provide the media with captivating content and boost their sales, making them one of the big winners in times of armed conflict. In conclusion, the web of beneficiaries in times of armed conflict is intricate and often disheartening. From news outlets capitalizing on sensational headlines to the US military-industrial complex reaping financial gains, and those in power leveraging crises to maintain control, the toll is multifaceted. While some prosper, it's essential to remember the countless lives affected by these conflicts. As we explore these complex dynamics, we must seek ways to promote peace and understanding, safeguarding the well-being of all. Thanks for watching, and let's continue to strive for a world where conflicts yield to cooperation and humanity prevails.